Alright, so a few things. I looked up dates for everybody, and I was definitely wrong about Velociraptor. Velociraptor and Parasaurolophus are right around mid 70 million years ago. Um, this guy was like 150 or so million years ago. It was like 155 to 140 something million years ago, so like 150. Um, yeah, I was about right on this one. So T Rex, Parasaurolophus, and Velociraptor are all relatively close in time. Um, I mean, you do have like 5 or 10 million years gap there, but compared to like Coelophysis, which is over 200 million years ago. So basically, we have a really early dinosaur here represented, and all of these other ones are considerably later, much more derived animals, much more mini innovations. And kind of the one that looks the most like it, Velociraptor, that sort of casually looks the most like it, is actually the most derived. You have the most changes actually in this animal. The pelvis is, you can see how narrow the pelvis is at the top here, and then it's at the base of the muscle attachment on the ilium. It is much broader, so that generally muscles, they want to attach relatively perpendicular to the direction that they pull in. That is not always possible, obviously. Like on the shaft of a long bone, you can't. You're not pulling this way. You're pulling this way, right? So it doesn't doesn't perfectly work that way. But this does sort of indicate the direction that the muscles are attaching, or want to attach and want to move. So if you have this angle on the ilium, it kind of indicates that the legs want to splay a little bit, and that's not what's happening here. You can actually see how this is working. So this is actually coming up over the crest of these. Right, you can see that it's popping up over that. Here, not as much. It's kind of just in line with it. This is much more vertical, much more straight up and down. So that handles a vertical leg position much more nicely. So that is innovative. The tail is rigid, and basically in birds you only have a few of these vertebrae left, and everything after it was just kind of deleted. So more or less, like where this strengthening, this rigid structure sort of starts, that's pretty much where birds just kind of like lopped off all of this crap. They're just to save weight. They have just a few of these vertebrae left to move the tail feathers and as their rudder, and they use the shaft of those feathers as the rigid component. So it's effectively very, very similar to how birds today do this, and this whole shoulder and like wishbone sort of situation that's going on here. Very, very similar to a bird. It's just not quite as beefy, so you don't have like a big keel on there to handle muscle attachments. Although I sort of suspect some of these guys here are going to be holding muscles quite effectively for getting a decently powerful downstroke. And you have the what was this? This is the ischium. So this is the pelvis. Yeah. So the pelvis is coming back very much like in a bird, but here the pelvis is coming forward. right? And then you have all these little muscles, these little, I don't know what these are called. These little riblets, whatever they are. This curve to this, I don't think that's right. I think this would be more like this, kind of coming out more round. I don't know why they have it done like this. If this is based on the way that an animal was in the rock, that's probably, if it is tucked in like this, that's probably from desiccation. That would be my guess. And thus probably not the natural living shape of it. Yeah, another thing that I noticed while I was looking at these again, this joint right here with the foot, it's very straight on Coelophysis, and if we look at Velociraptor, here it's curved, which indicates that this foot is basically always articulated a little bit relative to this, or it's able to articulate further. Like this leg is able to collapse. It's able to tuck it up further than Coelophysis is. Something like that. Something is going on there with this joint. That joint is changed. And of course the hand is changed. This is more of a grasping hand. This looks like it's sort of a slashing hand. And then, like the feet. Kind of just a flying bundle of razor blades with a face that eats your ass. Coelophysis isn't doing that. It's probably using its face similarly, but these are perhaps grasping, or perhaps they're more like lizard hands and they're just designed for walking on. I'm not sure. I'm non-committal on that. This guy is also highly derived, right? So Coelophysis is basically our prototype. And that's not actually fair for all genera of dinosaur, but you can kind of see what's going on here. Like here, when we're looking at Velociraptor, this is the pubis, the os pubis. It pulled back toward the rear from this, and here it just kind of retracted. It shortened up and retracted into the body. And then you have all sorts of changes here. This is much more vertical. This is actually right here, this little thing that it's showing right here is actually this little ridge that comes out sort of like toward you as the viewer. So it actually directly supports, almost like what I was saying, at almost 90-degree angle to muscles coming straight down onto the leg. So you get a very strong ability to draw the leg up if it's vertical. So you get good power in this the motion of the leg if the leg is oriented vertically. Very much in contrast to this, you have nothing like that with Coelophysis' pelvis, with the ilium. So I'm very skeptical that this guy had its legs tucked under its body like this all of the time, or maybe even most of the time. But then if we look at T-Rex, as I noted, T-Rex is very conservative, actually. So let's go back to Coelophysis. If we just kind of like look from Coelophysis to T-Rex, remarkably little is changed. Even though we're actually, this is the most amount of time has passed. Because this is the most, of all of these dinosaurs, this is the most modern, right? It is slightly younger than Parasaurolophus and slightly younger than Velociraptor, who are with each other roughly contemporaneous. And significantly, this is actually probably the most derived. Like, there's the most is going on here. The head is radically different. If we look at these guys, their heads are actually not that radically changed. So, like, from Coelophysis to Velociraptor, the heads are quite similar. If we go to T-Rex, right, you can see, there's definitely changes. It's beefier, it's vertically bigger, but yeah, like a lot of it is very similar. This is more maybe like crocodilian in its weight and its mass, but this is kind of really all we're looking at. Here you have a decoration. Dinosaurs in general enjoy head decorations. This is very common even in birds, in modern birds. Whereas mammals like to have other sorts of decorations. Birds very much, and a lot of lizards actually, I like to have head decorations as like a sexual attraction. So that's actually, if you remove that, then kind of the biggest thing is that the beak there for like plucking herbage, and the grinding teeth. So instead of sharp teeth, you have grinding teeth. So basically, its face is kind of like a deer if you take off the horn, or whatever the hell this is called. Yeah, the trumpet thing, whatever the fuck that is. And even to the point where the pubis here sort of meets all of these little dudes. If we just kind of drew a straight line from here to here, let's go back to Coelophysis. That is very similar to this line. So, like, this point where it meets in the first place is basically the same point on the T-Rex, and then it's just supported much further back. And you still have this, the ilium is still structured so that it looks like it much better supports splaying legs. So that is very conservative to Coelophysis. It looks like, more than the others, the shoulder blade is floating, sort of like maybe a cat or something, compared to these other guys. Yeah, I don't know. It's overall, I would say T-Rex is actually the most conservative of all of these dinosaurs that we're looking at. Its pelvis is virtually unchanged. It's maybe a little more symmetrical front to back than Coelophysis. I might note that Coelophysis, it's this crest in the front is smaller and more tucked in than at the rear, which sort of indicates that your rear, the muscles to the rear are stronger than the muscles to the front. So it is actually better at holding things back here. So like its backstroke is stronger than its front stroke. Like it can pull its leg back stronger and harder and faster probably than it can pull it forward. In contrast, T-Rex looks like it's very even. Its ability to do a forward stroke is about the same as its backstroke. That's about the biggest change that I'm seeing here. Except for that vertical crest there. But even the the ischium is very, very similarly structured on the T-Rex, whereas it's here the ischium is radically modified in the Parasaurolophus. It's proportionally it's lengthened, and then it's much beefier, and you know, it looks like it's designed to hold weight here. Like this extension on it looks very similar to the extension on this, which looks like it's designed to hold weight. It's designed to like protect and cradle organs and bear weight. Like it's not simply protection of organs like these probably provide. It looks like it's designed to bear weight. This is beefy as hell. I mean, look at that. The thickness of this. It's comparable to the thickness of its leg. And if we look proportionally, the femur is a very similar proportionally to Coelophysis, between Coelophysis and T-Rex. You do have yeah, the way this joint meets, it's not exactly the same, right? You can see that. And this is beefier. It has some bigger muscle attachments. So there's definitely some modifications going on. And this joint, sort of like Velociraptor, is turned forward a little bit. So T-Rex's leg probably folds up a little bit nicer. And T-Rex, like, his legs are probably setting a little more under his body than Coelophysis, and he's able to tuck his legs up a little bit more cleanly. But I think his legs probably splay out a little bit more than we have classically portrayed, based on what I'm seeing here. And I think that this is to bear the weight of the animal on the ground, and that it's down there a lot, with its belly on the ground, and his legs splayed out to the side a little bit. Very conservative with Coelophysis. And Coelophysis is in many regards conservative with lizards who have their legs splayed out. And then every other one is different from that. Every other one has its legs tucked underneath it. Parasaurolophus does. Sauropod does. The ilium on the sauropod is very, very vertical, with some of the crest actually coming out over, so you get all near vertical muscle attachments, or yeah, like near perpendicular to vertical. Yeah, Velociraptor is similar, and you might notice Velociraptor has a very strong, like this crest is very, very beefy to the front, which is quite unlike Coelophysis, right? So here, Coelophysis definitely has a stronger, like, it's able to kick off stronger than it's able to pull its leg forward. Velociraptor and T-Rex, maybe not. Maybe not T-Rex so much. But Velociraptor for sure is able to pull its leg forward very, very powerfully. That is probably for attacking. That is probably for being able to hold its legs in position, in sort of a forward position, when it hits its target. It's probably running at it real hard, and then jumping into it, perhaps gliding, controlling that final entry with its wings, and hitting it hard with those big talons. Something like that. I imagine that is very likely a reason why you have such a big surface area on the ilium out there out front to hold that. And you don't have anything like that here. So Coelophysis isn't behaving this way. Coelophysis isn't hunting in that way, or anything similar to that. This isn't a hunter, so this is quite weak actually. T-Rex, it might be using its rear legs. Now that I'm thinking about this, it might be using its rear legs to help process, and that actually might be one of the reasons it's on the ground, to help it process and eat food. So it might be like kind of hunkering down onto its prey, onto its kill, maybe holding onto it with these arms, and then using these legs to help it with its face pick it apart. Sort of like how like parrots will eat with their feet. It could be very much something like that. But also you notice something that I wanted to notice. Just looking at this guy, just looking at Silophysis, it looks like his center of gravity is probably like up here. So the fact that his legs are way the fuck back here, that doesn't feel right. I don't think he's running in this position. Maybe with his head tucked back to bring his center of gravity back, and then he can use this. He can use his neck to strike or something. I don't know. But you know, maybe like how a heron flies with its neck sort of tucked back. Here it doesn't matter so much because you have all four legs, but even our depiction of Parasaurolophus has the neck curved far more than this guy. And probably, if you look at it, the weighting of this neck and the head on all of these guys, if you look at, other than Coelophysis, so look at Velociraptor with its head out like that, look at Parasaurolophus with its head out like that, and note it's going to be quite heavy with the big trumpet that it has built into it, and the very heavy head of Tyrannosaurus Rex. The relative sort of torque on the neck is probably very comparable. He has a much lighter head, so this neck is probably reasonably extended. This looks like his center of gravity is probably right about here, like reasonably under where his feet are going to go, right? And if he's running, this is probably pretty accurate to his position, right? Because you want his center of gravity a little bit in front of your feet as you're moving, or the average position of your feet, so you're sort of falling and catching yourself, and that's one of the ways that you maintain speed. Doesn't look right for here. If anything, if we're running, if we have the body level like this, he probably has his neck tucked back. Or he tilts his body back more vertical, sort of like a basilisk running. Entirely plausible. Although the shape of that pelvis sort of indicates that that's not super likely. Like he probably doesn't do that too much. But also the way that the tail is able to articulate. He can sort of he can stand up a little bit and curl the tail back a little bit to avoid hitting the ground. Velociraptor is less able to do that. Any articulation it has is here, which is going to be limited because you only have, one vertebrae to the next. You can only move that, so much. So you're probably not able to move this a huge amount. Like I've seen pictures of this where they have this part nearly vertical. I don't think that's possible. I think something more like 10 or 15 degrees in any direction, much more reasonable. But here, because it can articulate all the way down like a lizard tail, you can do a lot more to get it away from wherever. And here you might notice that these are quite overlapping, so this is probably not very well articulated. This is probably fairly stiff, like a big paddle. Not entirely sure why or what that would be for, but that is a derived feature compared to Coelophysis. But notice the Tyrannosaurus has a tail that is very, very similar to Coelophysis. These bones are beefier, and they have these sort of pads on the bottom, which again tells me that this tail is probably sitting on the ground. And this could be when it's feeding, or, you know, whatever. Like I mentioned, it could, you know, sort of hunker down on the ground, like rest its tail, rest its body on the ground, and then use its hind legs and its face to eat, something like that. That could be one of the main reasons that it's built like this. And that could also be a reason that it's maintaining this sort of more splayed leg architecture here. I feel like that makes sense. Whereas these other guys, they're not behaving in that way. They're not using their rear legs. Coelophysis doesn't appear to be using its legs. It's in that manner. I mean, with that long neck, it can probably reach back to its feet, but it's probably not using these feet to grasp anything. If anything, it's likely using its hands to grasp things. So here, your derived features are mostly going to be size, the shape of really the weight of the skull, the ability of the skull to handle pressure, to drive force into its bite, and the reduction of the arm, and the beefiness of this right here. Well, and an improved ability to pull its leg forward, increased strength in the forward motion of the leg, and this joint here, which is also shared here. This you have this curve on this joint here. It's about, no, this is, yeah, they kind of all have it. Parasaurolophus, T-Rex, and Velociraptor all have it relative to Coelophysis. Yeah, the sauropod does not. Its leg structure is very deeply, very profoundly changed. Yeah. I don't know. There's a lot here that is very interesting and fascinating, and yeah, I just thought I would mention some of those things that I noticed here. The T-Rex is remarkably conservative to Coelophysis there. There are definitely changes. You know, obviously they look quite radically different. But even the weight problem, right? So here it looks like if Coelophysis is holding its body like this, its center of gravity is probably like up here somewhere, which is really far forward. So I'm very skeptical that that's a position that it could actually maintain in, especially walking. I don't think it's possible that it could walk like this. With its neck all the way out like this, I think it would have to be quadrupedal. And I think that its arms can handle that. And its leg structure. The way that its legs articulate with that pelvis, I think that's reasonable. T-Rex is more plausibly bipedal, but I think it's maintained that ability to display its rear legs for a reason. Yeah. Oh yeah, the weight. Right. So yeah, I was saying like CG of this guy looks like it's probably about here. CG of T-Rex looks like it's probably about here. It's pretty far forward. So I'm thinking there's a decent chance T-Rex is sitting a little more vertically than this if it's just walking around casually. Because that's pretty goddamn far forward. And its neck is so shortened because of the weight of its skull that it can't really tuck its head back too much more than this without breaking its neck. Like it just can't. Its neck can't articulate very much. These vertebrae are quite compressed compared to this guy. They're front to back. They're compressed. They're not able to articulate very well. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I'm sure I'll come up with some more things, but I think that's about where I'm at now with what I see here.